Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 110. Shizun doesn't know about the little puppy's past. Moran walked alone on the street. There were ghosts floating in the air. Along the way, some filled with resentment. The stone steps beneath his feet were covered with a few moss, making the steps wet and slippery. After the intense argument, he calmed down and found that his fingers were wounded and bloodied. That door frame was roughly made with lots of burrs that stuck in the flesh of his fingers, drawing blood. Fortunately, his surroundings were dark, so this was not discovered by the nearby ghosts. He lowered his eyelashes and watched his hands silently for a moment. It was probably because his heart was in turmoil that he was not feeling any pain. He glanced to look at the closed courtyard door, knowing full well that the man behind the door would not say another word to him. He wasn't unfamiliar with this kind of rejection. Moran was a person who was used to malicious intents. This allowed him to see if his pleading would work with just a single glance from someone else's eyes or from 2 or 3 words. In fact, when the man retracted his words and said instead, "I've never seen him," he already knew that the man wouldn't tell him even half a sentence of truth. It was just that it was related to Chu Wanning's soul, so he wasn't willing to give up until he was pushed out of the door. It had been a long time since he had been violently rejected, but there were times when the length of years did not determine anything, when the turn of events did not change the fundamentals, when some things were engraved into the bones. Xuemeng had once scolded him and called him a lowly bastard. Funny how Moran thought that such insults from the proud darling of the heavens wouldn't be able to hurt his self-esteem. That's right, he was a lowly bastard that everyone was talking about. He had heard more vicious and malicious words than that. What was there to not get used to? He took one last look at the tightly shut wooden door, then he slowly walked as the onlooking ghosts laughed. The jeers, the abuse, the solitude, the shadows. It was a rare occasion for him to be in such a state of desperation and helplessness that it overlapped with the memories of his childhood. As Moran walked on, he couldn't help but think back to the days when he and his mother had depended on each other for survival. Back then, they were no longer in the Lefang, but were roaming the streets of Linyi, wandering near the Jufeng Gate. In those days, at least, he had his mother. His mother loved him and refused to let such a young child go out to beg for food. She would settle him in a deserted woodshed and would go out to the streets to perform. She used to be a famous songstress, so she would sing and dance on a bamboo pole so she could earn some coins in a day to buy bread and 2 bowls of porridge for the 2 of them to share. As a mother, she always wanted her child to eat more, but Moran would always say after a few bites that the bread is too hard and the congee tasteless, saying that his stomach was already full and would refuse to eat any more. However, what she did not know was that every time she sighed and ate half a piece of cake and half bowl of porridge left over from Moran, the young child curled up on the side pretending to be asleep, would secretly look at her with narrowed eyes. Only after seeing her eat until she was full would he finally feel at ease. She also did not know that every day after she left to go to Linyi City to perform, her child would crawl out from the pile of firewood and secretly go to a place 2 streets away from where she was to beg for food. His mother was singing a melodious tune at the end of the street. Her thin body was dancing on a 10-foot-high pole that was propped up from the ground. The floor was covered with broken pieces of porcelain, and if she were to accidentally fall down, these porcelain pieces would all pierce into her flesh. She would use her life to win the smiles of the people around. And 2 blocks away, her child was begging along the street, grinning in front of every house, his face dirty, saying the same auspicious words for something to eat. But he wasn't successful very often. One day, a rich young woman, pregnant and bored, wandered down the street and saw Moran's mother dancing on the bamboo pole. She found it interesting and went over to look at it for a moment and asked her escort to tell the dancing woman, "All you have laid on the ground are broken stones and pieces of broken porcelain. It's not such a big deal, not sincere enough. Our Lady has said that if you are willing to replace these broken pieces of porcelain with knives and stick them on the ground and dance again, Our Lady will reward you with 10 taels of gold. Faced with such demanding, almost life-threatening demands, the mother's reaction was actually just a sentence, "But I don't have the money. I can't afford a knife." The rich lady laughed and ordered someone to buy 100 knives from the ironworks shop and set them on the ground. Dance. The bejeweled woman caressed her bulging stomach as she spoke with great interest. Soon a large crowd gathered around to watch the scene. The light of their silk and jade sparkled in the sunlight as if they were vultures on the prowl when they smelled blood. They stretched their neck, their eyes gleaming. "Dance, dance. I'll reward you with money if you can dance well." For the money, for the money. In the area of the Rufeng sect, there were no shortage of rich people. What they were lacking was excitement and liveliness such as the spectacle of such show where one was risking their lives. The silk, along with the gold and silver pearls, surrounded this destitute, ragged woman who was holding onto a bamboo pole. The woman, whose life was like a piece of grass, just smiled, gave the scavenging vultures a hail of thanks for their support, and then, bracing herself on the pole, leapt up as lightly as a sparrow. On the point of the sword, she used her life to perform a song and dance, used her life to please the audience. However, although she was skilled, when she landed, she felt a trace of panic, and as she lowered her head to look at the rows of open-edged knives, the bamboo pole shifted a few inches, and with a cry of alarm from the crowd, she landed. Even though she managed to avoid the dense part of the protruding knives, she still got caught in one side and cut her leg. In that instant, blood splattered everywhere, causing a crowd of people to cry out in alarm. The woman could not care about the pain. She quickly stood up, forced a smile, and bowed her head in apology. Those who were watching the show laughed and said, "Miss, skills aren't good enough yet, so you still need to work harder." That's right. When you come out and work for a meal, you need to have some skills. Even a three-legged cat knows how to make a living. A few people were kind-hearted, had tears in the corners of their eyes and find this quite unbearable. "Alas, stop it now, look at this poor girl, she is so badly injured, go to the pharmacy and get some medicine to treat that." The woman stammered, I don't have the money to buy medicine." Some of them sighed, some raised their hands to touch their jade beads, but did not say anything. Others wiped the corners of their eyes, as if they were deeply moved. "How pitiful. Yeah. Seeing that you are having such a hard time, let me give you some money," an old woman with a big belly said, feeling out her bulging purse, pulling out a handful of gold leaves from it and cupping them in her hand, then continuing to dig under the purse, pulling out 3 coins, weighing them in her hand, putting 2 back and solemnly placing one in the woman's hand. When the old lady gave her money, so she naturally shed 2 streams of tears. She said mercifully, "Miss, this is what you deserve. Quickly take it." The woman held onto a copper coin that she had traded for her life and mumbled in a daze, "Many thanks. Thank you." And the rich lady who said she would give 10 taels of gold? She had long left while cursing angrily. The woman with the bleeding leg hobbled over and tried to go after her to ask for the money she promised, but was pushed back by the escorts she had with her, cursing and swearing that could be heard from across the street. "It's bad luck. How can you let Our Lady see a bloodbath when she's about to give birth? If the Lord heard about this, he'll be heartbroken. You still have the nerve to ask for money? What did you jump for? It is fortunate that your blood did not splash on me, or else you would not have been able to bear the consequences." Scram. The woman was pushed down to the ground. Because the family was a renowned one in Linyi, no one was willing to stand up for her. She lay on the ground convulsing in pain, as she squirmed about like a lowly ant. No one was willing to help her. No one was willing to help. She danced with her life and got nothing but a cold, stinking copper coin. The good old woman who gave her the coin said she deserved it. She didn't feel sorry for herself, but she had only earned 1 copper coin today. What could she buy but a plain pie? She couldn't even afford a bowl of porridge, her leg was injured and she wouldn't be able to dance tomorrow. What should she do with her son? He was still so young and thin. He was going to starve again. When she thought of this, she could no longer bear it. She curled up in the mud and began to wail and howl. Her voice was hoarse and people couldn't bear to listen. The people around her sighed and began to disperse. At this moment, a dirty, foul-smelling child suddenly rushed over from the crowd. Moran ran over and cried like a trapped beast, "Mother! Mother!" He hugged her. A humble child, hugging the humble mother. Like a mole cricket clinging to the grass, a ruminant dog clinging to a floating weed. The woman's eyes flashed with fear and surprise at the sight of him. A woman is weak by nature, but a mother is strong. She immediately stopped crying. Life was already too difficult enough. Every day was like going to sleep in hell and waking up in purgatory, and she did not want to look weak and helpless in front of her child. Her tears had not dried yet, but she hurriedly forced a smile and said, "Aya, look at you, why are you here? Mother is fine, just a small wound. Look." She thrust the sweaty coin she was holding in her hand at him. Moran could not help but shake his head, and lines of water began to appear on his small face. "It's enough to buy you a pie, go and buy it, mother will wait for you here and then we will go home." Home? Where is home? That dilapidated woodshed? Or was it sheepfold where they were chased out after sleeping in it for 2 days? He said, "Mother, you sit here and wait. What are you going to do? Don't do anything reckless." Moran rushed to the side, picked up a knife and shouted loudly and clearly in a childish voice, drawing the eyes of the crowd that was about to disperse. "Aunts and uncles, ladies and gentlemen, please don't go away, please don't go away. There is another skill that I would like to invite you all to have a look at." He had spiritual energy in his body since he was young. Even though he had never cultivated, he was still much stronger than ordinary people. Without any aptitudes, Moran gripped the sturdy and sharp blade in his hand. He exerted strength into both of his hands and with a low shout, he cut the blade in half and threw it on the ground. The people around were astonished, and some of the cultivators among the onlookers were even more astonished. "This child is great." Again. This time, he took 2 and did the same, breaking the 2 blades as well. "All right." Someone applauded. "Make it 3. As the child stacked them one on top of the other, the blades became thicker and harder to break, and the crowd became lively again. "I beg all my uncles and brothers and aunts and sisters to give some reward, and I will add more." Those people who wanted to watch the show threw the most worthless copper coins on the ground in front of him. Moran added knife after knife for these coins, and by the end his hands were so full of blood that he could no longer fold the knives. The scavenging vultures then fluttered their blackened feathered wings and dispersed. Moran picked up all the money and held it carefully in his dirty little hands as he walked over to his mother, who was in a daze and crying. He smiled. "Mother, it's enough to buy you medicine." The woman's tears could no longer be contained and rolled down her face. Good boy, let mother see your hands." "I'm fine," he said with a smile so bright and pure that it burned her heart. She held him tightly in her arms and choked back a sob. "It's mother's fault for not being able to take care of you, for making you suffer at such a young age." "It's all right," Moran said quietly in his mother's arms. "I don't blame mother at all. I will stay with mother and when I grow up, I will let her have a good life." The woman laughed and wiped away the tears at the corners of his eyes. "It doesn't matter if I don't live a good life. As long as you grow up safe and sound, that's good enough, that's enough. Moran nodded vigorously, then said softly, Mother, if I am successful in the future, you will never have to suffer again, no one can bully you. Those people just now, I will make them come and apologize to Mother one by one. If they refuse, I will make them dance on the blade too. Silly boy, don't think like that. This kind and gentle woman stroked her son's hair and murmured, Don't ever think like that, don't hate anyone, Mother wants to see you become a good child, promise Mother that you will be a good person, okay? At that time, Moran was too small, just like a tender seedling. With just a little push, he would have been able to move towards that direction. His simple mother, whose knowledge was not deep, was the first beacon of his life, and so little Moran, who had been thinking for a while, finally said seriously, Yes, Mother, I promise you. Then, if in the future, when I make something of myself, I will build many, many houses for the homeless to live in. I would plant many grains and feed those who don't have enough to eat, he said to his mother, Mother, no one else will be like we are today. The woman was out of breath for a moment, and finally she sighed and said, That's good. The child also nodded and said, Then that's good. Little did they know then that the boy who uttered such words would end up with his hands full of blood and bones. He would soar through the foul wind amidst the black ravens circling in the sky, becoming the Taxian Jun who would wreak havoc on the world. And Taxian Jun, the cultivator emperor of who wreaked havoc on the world, would never remember the promise he made in his mother's arms back then, with his young and tender voice. Back then, because of Moran's mother's advice, no matter how difficult their life was, they managed to be not so resentful of the situation. The days passed one by one just like this. They tried to continue to earn a living by such performances, however, their audiences find them entertaining less and less. Gradually, they could not even get a single copper coin, and could only rely on begging for a living. Moran remembered a rich and powerful family whose child was about his age and had a large black mole at the corner of his mouth. The child was sitting at the entrance to the courtyard, holding a bowl in his hand and, probably because his chopsticks holding skill were not yet nimble enough, he poked a bamboo skewer into the golden and crispy fried dumplings. The child was very picky. He ate the dumpling stuffing inside, then spat out the skin and threw it on the ground for the dog to play with. He walked over cautiously and stood by the side, watching. Alerted by his stench, the child cried out, Who is it? Moran asked him softly, Young master, this dumpling skin. Can you give it to me? For you. Why should I give it to you? You didn't eat it, so I just wanted to ask. I won't eat it, but our Wonke wants to eat it too. The child pointed to the two dogs on the ground which were fat with smooth fur, and exclaimed in exasperation, The dogs can't even feed themselves, how can they give it to you? What if the dogs don't want it, too? How can they not want to eat it? They don't even have enough roasted meat every day. It's just the skin of a dumpling, 2 bites and it's gone. There's nothing for you. So, go. When Moran heard about the roasted meat, his eyes fell on the two dogs. He suddenly thought of how fat the dogs would be if boiled and eaten. It would definitely. He could not help but swallow his saliva at the two dogs. This action was completely seen by the child. The child was stunned at first, but soon after, he cried out in alarm, What are you planning? I didn't. I just. You want to eat Wonke and Wongfu? Moran said fearfully, No, I'm just too hungry. I can't help but think, I'm sorry. When he heard the phrase, can't help but think, his face turned pale with horror. How could a rich boy like him understand that someone could think of food while looking at the cute little dog that was watching the door? He was so shocked that he just felt that the person in front of him was sick and horrible, and he shouted, Somebody get rid of him now. The servants came around and punched and kicked Mo Ran, who managed to grab a few more dumpling skins from the ground in the midst of the vicious punches and kicks, and held them tightly in his hands, not letting go of them even though he was being kicked and chased. The young master looked like he was scared silly and didn't want the rest of the dumplings in his hands anymore, throwing them on the ground with the bamboo skewers and running away. Mo Ran then struggled to crawl that way, his skinny body bruised and battered, and one eye was kicked so hard he couldn't open it in pain, but he smiled happily as he reached out to grab the rest of the thrown dumpling. There are still 2 left. With the stuffed in it. One for himself and one for his mother. Or just give both to mother and just have the dumpling skins himself. But he didn't even have time to carry the dumplings away before a servant's foot came down in the confusion and crushed the dumplings on the bamboo skewer, breaking the pastry skin and turning the meat filling into mud. He just held the dirty, broken stick in a dumbfounded way as punches and kicks rained down on him. He felt no pain, but seeing that the dumplings could never be eaten anymore, tears streamed down his eyes in a daze, trickling from the slits of his swollen eyelids onto the small, dirty, swollen face. He just wants to eat a little bit of what the other child have thrown already. Why waste it, break it, and turn it into mud? It couldn't belong to him either. Later on, Mo Ran became a young master of Shizun Peak and many people in the sect welcomed him and flattered him. On his birthday, he would be presented with gifts and congratulations by people who could not even talk to him. The child who once knelt on the ground to snatch a few dumpling skins were now being showered with praise and compliments. He stood in front of a pile of carefully selected congratulatory gifts when a vague sense of trepidation rose in his heart. He was afraid that the gifts would soon be gone, that they would be smashed into pieces, that a disaster would fly from nowhere, and that everything in front of him would be trampled on just like the dumplings he had held in his hands, before they reached his mouth. So, he quickly used all the things in that pile that he could use and ate all that he could eat. For those that he really couldn't use or eat, he had kept a secret container in the disciples' room and hid all those exquisite gifts carefully, counting them again and again every day. At that time, Xuemeng pointed and laughed at him, saying, "Ha ha ha, it's just a box of pastries from Linen Qingfeng Pavilion, so if you can't eat it, just throw it away. Look at you. You're like a reincarnated hungry ghost. You can't stuff all of that into your stomach in a single meal. No one will fight with you over it." At that time, he had just arrived to Shizun Peak and deep down, there was still a great deal of unease in his heart. So, in the face of his cousin's taunts, he simply grinned, with the crumbs of confectionery dabbing at the corners of his mouth, before burying his head and continuing to unwrap another box of pastries to eat. Xuemeng was amazed. "You have such a big appetite. How could you stomach all that?" He only cared about eating. "Don't try to eat them all if you can't. I get so many pastries every year for my birthday. We will have them again." Mo Ran's cheeks were stuffed and bulging, and he ate so quickly that he actually choked a little, his moist, dark eyes glancing at the teenager across the room. In that moment, he suddenly thought of that young master he met when he was a young boy. How he could be picky with his food without worry, and that he would only eat the dumpling stuffing and feed the dumpling skin to the dogs. Xuemeng had also grown up in this way, so he could easily say things like, "If you can't eat it, then throw it away and no one will snatch it away from you." He really envied him. Now that he had finally become a young master of a famous sect, he should be able to live a comfortable life and squander his wealth freely. But he didn't dare. All he ended up doing was grabbing the glass of water next to him, gulping down several sips, swallowing the choked food into his stomach, and continued to push on. Later on, he became the Emperor Taxian Jun. Everything within the divine state was within his grasps. At that time, beauties, wine, food, gold, silver, pearls, and precious artifacts would be sent to him from the 4 corners of the world in an endless stream. One day, a big copper merchant came from Linyi, saying that he had found a rare piece of fire jade and wanted to present it to the Emperor Taxian Jun. There are too many ordinary people who use treasures to bribe for an official position or for a shade to shine on. Mo Ran actually had little interest in it. But that day, Chu Wanning fell ill with a cold spell. Mo Ran frowned, thinking that the fire jade could drive away the cold, so he could save the sick man from lying in bed all day. And so, he met the rich merchant who came to deliver the treasure. The merchant was about his age, slightly fat and with a large black mole with hair at the lower corner of his mouth. Mo Ran sat on his throne in the Wushan palace. His slender hands were folded and his fingertips was tapping his chin. He silently stared, making the fat businessman's legs weak and his back wet with sweat. It was only after a long time that he shivered, his lips twitching, and suddenly fell to his knees with a thump, kowtowing repeatedly and stammered, "Your Majesty the Emperor, this humble one. This humble one." His fat body shivered beneath his gold-threaded shirt. Mo Ran suddenly smiled. Even if he had only met this person once, he would never forget it. In front of the gloriously rich mansion that time, the little boy with the black mole at the corner of his mouth ate the bowl of golden dumplings that Mo Ran thought he would never possibly have in this life. He poked the dumplings with bamboo sticks in a lavish manner, the oil in the corners of his mouth visible. Mo Ran smiled and said, "You know, your family's fried dumplings are especially good." Although he never tasted it at all, it has been on his mind for half his life. Mo Ran sat on his throne and watched the man below him go from terrified to stunned, from stunned to bewildered, and from bewildered to pandering, chanting and ingratiating himself, saying that he would soon bring the cook of his house to Shizun Peak and present him to His Majesty Taxian Jun. At that moment, Mo Ran realized more than ever that there are many people in this world who would rather kneel down and lick the boots of the strong than lower their heads and show a little compassion and kindness to the weak. Mo Ran shook her head, trying to shake off the memories in his mind. Actually, he rarely reminisced about his past, thinking that it was a weakness and didn't want it anymore. However, being constantly rejected and driven away like this were very similar to his circumstances in the past, that he couldn't help but free those memories from the shackles he had put in the depths of his mind, causing him to temporarily sink into the darkness of his past. He got dazed for a moment. He thought of how when he was young, he had promised his mother that he would not hold a grudge and that he would secure a house that could shelter homeless people, that he would feed the poor people who were hungry. And how he didn't fulfill any of it. And how in the end, he killed the last person in the world who treated him well. He had caused the death of Chu Wanning, his very own Shizun. Chu Wanning. Mo Ran's heart ached at the thought of him, and he subconsciously took out the piece of paper with Chu Wanning's portrait in it. The paper was already crumpled, and he pursed his lips as he silently raised his hand to smooth it out, but as soon as he touched it, blood stuck to it. He withdrew his hand almost immediately in fear of soiling the portrait and dared not touch it again. As he walked from 5th Street to 3rd Street, he continued to ask around, but the ghosts all said they had never seen a man like the one in the portrait. He walked alone through the long, endless night. The night seemed so dark and so long that it seemed that no amount of hard walking would ever bring him to the break of dawn. Mo Ran finally felt tired. He hadn't drunk a drop of water or eaten a grain of rice in a while. He truly couldn't take it anymore. Just in time, he saw a wonton stall, so he went there to buy a bowl and ate it quietly when no one was paying attention. The food in the ghost realm was cold, not even emitting any steam. Mo Ran took out the soul-calling lantern, scooped up a spoonful and passed it in front of the lamp and asked would Shizun want to have some of this. Of course, Shizun did not react. Mo Ran ate it all by himself, saying as he ate, "But you've never liked wonton, you just like sweet things. When I find you later and we go back, I will make you pastries to eat every day." In the silence of the night, a man sits with a lamp in front of a lonely midnight snack stall. The evening breeze was rustling, a few withered leaves would occasionally chase after each other in a curl. At this moment, the underworld seemed to be very peaceful. peach blossom cake, osmanthus candy, walnut cake, cloud slice cake. He counted them one by one to the soul-calling lantern, as if Chu Wanning would be willing to pay attention to him if he heard them. The young man's slender hand reached out and gently touched the silk cover of the soul-calling lantern, just as he had done when he was 30 years old and Chu Wanning had died. He held his corpse in his arms, out of breath and in a daze as he said, "Chu Wanning, I hate you so much," but lowered his head and kissed his face. "Young one, did you just got here?" Suddenly, a voice like a broken gong rang out. It was the old man who was selling the wontons. His eyes were blurry and so he groped his way to sit beside him. He must have died of old age as his swarthy face is shriveled up like a piece of poplar in the desert. He took a cigarette out of his shroud and put it in his mouth. Then, with the benevolence and many things unique to old people, he went over and chatted with Mo Ran. Mo Ran sniffled and smiled back, "Yes, the first day." "Yes, it looks like you're new to me." "A question, how did you come here at such a young age?" "Chi deviation." "Oh," the old man sipped at the smoke that wasn't on fire, "you're a cultivator then?" "Yes." Mo Ran nodded and looked at him. He did not hold much hope, but he still took out the portrait and said, "Uncle, I'm looking for someone. This is my Shizun, who also came down here not long ago. I wonder if you've seen him." The old man took the painting and hunched over to the lamp, squinting his shadowy knitted eyes as he slowly studied it for a long time. Mo Ran sighed and tried to take the painting back. "It's fine. I've asked a lot of people. It's fine if you don't know, that's how everyone is anyway. I've seen him before." Mo Ran was shocked. He instantly became so excited that his blood rushed to his head, and quickly pulls him, "Old uncle, you've seen him, are you sure? There's no mistaking it." The old man sat cross-legged on a bar stool and picked at his feet. "You don't see many people who look like this all year round. I'm sure that the man was your Shizun." Mo Ran abruptly got up on his feet. He bowed towards the old man again as he looked up and said earnestly, "Old uncle, please tell me more." "Aya, there is no need to be so polite, young one. When we all become ghosts, we will have to go to reincarnation again in the blink of an eye, and the memories we have from our last lives will only be retained for 10 or 8 years. This old man's son went early and felt sorry for all of you who lost your lives so young." He wiped his tears and twisted his snotty nose with his sleeve before saying, "In the first street up ahead, did you see that particularly grand palace?" "Yes, I did." "Is that where my Shizun is?" "Yes, that's where he is." "What is that place?" "It's the fourth Ghost King's other palace." The old man sighed. The fourth Ghost King doesn't actually live here, but he had his subordinates build a palace in Nangtown for no other reason than to collect the beauties who arrived in the underworld and keep them under house arrest. Every once in a while, he would come to that palace to choose his concubines, regardless of gender. Those who were chosen were taken directly to the fourth level of hell, but if they were not chosen, they were said to be given to his subordinates to play with. "AI, what do you think this world is dash dash?" No sooner had he finished speaking, he saw the young cultivator picked up the lantern and bolt into the night like a wolf dog. The old man froze for a moment and then with some envy murmured slowly, "It's good to be young, you can run really fast." End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 111. Shizun is like a blade, you are like water. There is only one entrance to the palace of the fourth king and it is heavily guarded. Naturally, Mo Ran was not foolish enough to go to the main entrance. He leapt up onto the roof beam. He was worried that the light from the soul-calling lantern would attract unwanted attention, so he hid the lamp in his kinkin pouch and flew over the roof tiles, his figure as fast as a black lightning bolt. The palace looks huge from the outside but more so inside, as there was a series of courtyards and corridors that overlap. Mo Ran leapt over to the top of one of the towers and crouched down lightly, blending in with the diaphanous tiles. He looked down and saw that the whole palace was like a small city, and it was hard to see the entirety of it. Moran's heart filled with endless anxiety. He finally knew why the old man had refused to tell him where his Shizun had gone. He was probably afraid of offending the fourth king. But even though he knew that Chu Wanning was in this palace, he was still at his wits' end. Where could Chu Wanning be when there seems to be about 900, if not 1000, palaces here? He was like a man on the verge of finding a treasure, his heart and hands trembling more than before. Shizun, where are you? As he pondered, he saw a group of men around the corner, carrying red wind lanterns, kicking and stomping. They were all clad in gold armor and wore boots. One by one, they made their way from the east gate to the main walkway and, after twisting and turning, came to an inconspicuous side room. In the side room was an old acacia tree, which blocked Moran's view of the courtyard, so that he could only see half of the courtyard and the other half was hidden behind the foliage. When the ghost soldiers entered, there were a flurry of tables and chairs, and a lot of shouting and drinking. A sharp scream pierced the air as a woman was grabbed by her hair and thrown into the courtyard, her robe half open, half slipped off by the rough pushing of the soldiers, revealing her snowy skin. "I'll let you run. I'll let you fucking run." The whip ruthlessly strikes the woman's body. It could only be an instrument of torture in the ghost realm that even ghosts and monsters would be pained and killed by it. The woman crawled on the ground shivering. She seemed to be trying to run, but there were ghost soldiers everywhere and she had nowhere to go. "Bitch, you've entered the fourth king's palace and you're still thinking of getting out. I was a good person when I was alive. I have no sins. Why are you doing this to me?" The woman screamed. "Let me out, I want to go to my next life. I don't want to stay here." Another whipping was administered, causing her to wail again and again. "Serving the fourth king saves you from the pain of reincarnation, ungrateful wench. He doesn't even look at me. Why can't I go? Ah." Another whip came down on her face and the woman cried out in pain, shaking uncontrollably but still trying to crawl out. Her beast-like defiance seemed to please the ghost soldiers of the fourth king as they were laughing. Then, one after another, the tribute were pulled out of the room. The leader of the ghost soldiers said, "All of you have worked hard, and the ones in this courtyard were not chosen by the fourth king. I know that. You guys are having a hard time today, pick out the ones you like to play with. If there's someone you really like, register it and bring it back to your place." The lecherous spirits under the fourth king's command shouted and laughed uncontrollably as they went to the room to take their pick. The woman outside was not spared, and was surrounded by several men under the tree, pouncing on her like hungry wolves, as if they wanted to chew up her soul. In the room there were gasps and whispers, people crying, people screaming, people begging for mercy. Others, unable to bear such torture and wanting to be freed, give up their souls to bend the rules and try to please. The ugliness of all beings, whether in hell or on earth, is the same. Moran dropped down gently from the tower and under the cover of the night, entered the roof of the side hall. He thought that according to the old man from the wonton stall, Chu Wanning had just arrived and shouldn't be among the current selection of tributes to the fourth king. However, he was still a little uneasy and so he lifted a small tile and looked down quietly. In the midst of the clouds of desire in the room, he saw a familiar face amongst the chaos. Rongju. This prostitute whom he had quite favored in his previous life was among the tributes. Well, he is a resourceful one and seems to know how to deal with things in life, as well as in death. Many people in the room were struggling, unwilling to obey. Some of them even called out the names of their loved ones in the mortal world, while others were spitting incessantly in defiance of their names. But Rongju was different. Moran knew this man well, he loved money and his life. Of course, there was no life to love after death, but he also cherished his soul and did not want to suffer further abuse. On the messy, wide bed, almost all of the unsuccessful tributes around him were pleading and struggling, except for him, whose eyes were closed, letting the man have his way, his mouth softly purring like a cat's. Moran looked at his face, which was covered with springtide, and a chill crept up from the bottom of his heart. He thought of Chu Wanning. Rongju is water while Chu Wanning is a refined steel. At first glance, he looks as if he is as cold and hard as black iron, and no one can destroy him. But in such a situation, Rongju will please, will flatter, will be willing to bend down and use his softness to build himself an impregnable battlement. But what about Chu Wanning? Moran doesn't even have to think about it to know what will happen to him. He would rather have his soul be scattered in the 18th level of hell than be touched like this. Water would not break but steel blade will. Bam! There was a loud noise that sent chills through the people in the room as well as to the person on the roof. Moran's face went white and he looked towards the courtyard. The defiant woman was stabbed in the chest by the ghost soldier. Her soul gradually became transparent, tears could be seen streaming down from her eyes. Time seemed to freeze for a moment before her soul suddenly scattered to a speck of dust. Her soul had been destroyed. The ghost soldier who had destroyed her soul cursed and stood up. He had a hideous whip mark on his face, presumably from the woman who had just taken his spirit-suppressing whip and hit him with it. The ghost soldier spat, "Damn, what bad luck. She was already a ghost and still couldn't bear it. What a bitch." Moran felt like he was falling into an icy cavern. He felt that what he had seen was not a woman he had never met before. It seemed he had also seen the choice that Chu Wanning would make. Rongju is still in the throes of lust, completely in his element. This is how he survived, clinging to someone stronger, using his tenderness to entice them into his net. Gradually all the tributes in the room began to succumb. The rotten stench tightening one's throat and making one want to gag. It took an unknown amount of time before the curtain came down on the surly scene. Rongju really did know how to make his paramours reluctant to leave him. Some officers and soldiers put on their clothes and went to the leader to register, so they could take their pick with them after they had been shown to the fourth king. These people are all ghosts under the fourth king and do not enter the reincarnation cycle. Following them is not as good as following the fourth king, but it is a way to live comfortably without humiliation. Rongju was very satisfied with this. The ghost soldier who was to take him back flirted and laughed with him some more, but it was late and he had to change his post, so he left first. The line of demons walked away. The side hall was desolate and messy, as if it was a feast that had just ended. Broken wine and human feelings littered on the ground as they slowly cooled down. Rongju sat up lazily. Despite being a man, he was actually the most relaxed of the group. When he had finished dressing, he looked into the copper mirror and felt that his face was haggard after death. It was not as rosy as when he was alive, but rather as if it did not match with his appearance. Rongju ignored the women who were sobbing, dazed, and shivering. He straightened his clothes, put on his silk footwear and paced out into the courtyard. In the ghost realm, carmine flowers bloomed even more brilliantly red than those in the mortal world. He folded a bunch and dabbed the juice of the flowers with his delicate fingertips, staining the tips of his lips and smearing them on his cheeks. He was born bitter as he felt he suffers from life. In his opinion, friendship was something that only noble people who had eaten their fill could pursue. He was originally a filth in the earth, and did not care about honor, righteousness and shame. He only had his life in his arms, and when his life was gone, he carried his soul with him. Suddenly, there was a faint rustling sound behind him, as if someone had touched the leaves of the flowers. He thought it was the official with whom he had sex with who had returned, so gathered all the tenderness in his eyes as he gazed back sweetly, making a magnificent and feminine sight. But when he saw the person standing coldly by the flowers, Rongju took a step back, his eyes widened and his lips opened lightly, as if he had been put to death by lightning. "It's you, Dot. It's me." Mo Ran said. The expression on Rongjui's soft face changed from surprise, to hesitation, to gloating, to annoyance, to apprehension and to feigned calm. Then finally, it settled on a stark cold expression. He was used to wearing a smiling expression, and a fierce ruthless expression looked heavy on his face. Why has young Master Mo has come as well? The last time they met was very unpleasant. Rongju stood up straight, looking indifferent. Mo Ran said, I'm looking for someone. Rongju seemed to scoff. I can't imagine that a man as flamboyant as young Master Mo would have something he can't let go of when he reaches the ghost realm. Mo Ran did not want to talk to him too much, so he took the portrait out and showed it to Rongju. Have you seen him? Rongju glanced at the portrait and sneered, he was only that much pretty. Who owned him? Mo Ran frowned and said, have you seen him? Just tell me if you had seen him before. No. Rongju said indifferently, even if I did, I won't to tell you. I'm tired, I'll go back and rest. Go up where you came from, young Master Mo. I won't be without seeing you off. Mo Ran called out to him, Rongju. The slender figure paused and turned a half-flattering face sideways with some amusement. What? I'm going to save him. If you are willing, I will save you, too. There is no way you really want to be with these ghost soldiers. Mo Ran added, go to your reincarnation. Rongju turned his face to the side and said flirtatiously, is young Master Mo saying that I have another path to take? That there is another choice I could make? This Rongju had lived a bitter life in all his 20 years. Where I was is no different from this place, just that the benefactor has changed from a human to a ghost, so what difference does it make if he is reincarnated or not? You're begging for your life at the point of a knife. This time, Rongju really laughed. He smiled and looked at Mo Ran. When have I not been under the knife? I've always been like the fish on a chopping board. If I were to meet good people, I can get more silver. If I get to meet a good man like young Master Mo, not paying is not a big deal, but to run away with my belongings and pretend you don't know me. Young Master Mo, you stabbed me first and then advised me to be careful of the knife. How kind of you. End chapter.